Good afternoon and warm welcome everyone to the third instalment of our Highways themed Connect events. I'm really delighted to welcome you all here today and thank you for taking the time to join us in discussing such an important issue for our communities, and that is the topic of road maintenance. Roads are one of the most visible and frequently raised concerns for parish and town councils, and today's session is offering you a fantastic opportunity to gain a much deeper understanding of the processes and the strategies and the challenges involved in keeping Devon's highways safe and functional. I have over the years had lots of conversations with parish councils about highways matters, and there have been from time to time cases of misinformation, misunderstanding, and quite frankly some unrealistic expectations, I think, about how highways functions and what they can expect in terms of services on the ground. So this event, being delivered in collaboration with Devon County Council's highways team, is designed to help bring you clarity and insight into the process, helping to equip you to communicate with others in your communities and to manage expectations around what can be done within the resources available. So this is going to be quite a heavy session at times, but please stick with us because it's going to be really, really useful information. We're going to be covering quite a lot of different factors. We're going to be covering the legal frameworks that underpin highways maintenance and Devon County Council responsibilities. We're going to be looking at the asset maintenance frameworks and plans that exist, exploring the risk management approach that Devon County takes to prioritising maintenance work. We're looking at both preventative and reactive strategies. We're going to touch on quality assurance processes because I know that's something that is important to some of our members, and we'll be highlighting the innovative and the improvements being made to get best value out of the resources that are available to maintain our roads. This is a really valuable opportunity to learn directly from those responsible for keeping our roads safe and functional. It's going to help you to build greater understanding and hopefully will continue to strengthen the working relationships that parish and town councils have with the highways team. But before we dive in, I'd just like to cover a few ground rules just to ensure that we have an enjoyable session today. First thing is please stay muted when you're not speaking because this really helps to avoid background noise. Let's all be mindful to treat each other with civility and respect at all times. We're all here to learn and collaborate. There will be time for questions and comments after the presentation, so please hold off your questions until the end, please. You can then use either the chat or the raise hand features to indicate that you have a question, and we'll try to get as many questions as we can answered throughout the session. As always, we're not going to be able to answer questions on really localised matters. That'd be really unfair to put our speakers on the spot for that because they're not going to have the details to hand. But if there's anything that we aren't able to answer, if there's too many questions raised today, we will commit to providing answers after today's session, and we'll get them back to you in writing. This session is being recorded. The recording and the presentation and any of the resources highlighted today will be shared with all participants after the event. So with that, I hope we're going to have a really enjoyable session again, and thank you everyone once again for being here today. And I'd like to now hand over to Ian James from Devon County Council.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, so my name is Ian James. I'm the Highways and Traffic Management Group Manager for Devon County Council. So thank you, Cara, for welcoming us today to event and the time you've put into making this happen. So we're truly grateful to see so many of you joining us today. So your presence and dedication of time means a lot to us. So as Cara mentioned, this is the third Connect event we have run, and they're proving to be very successful. So in June, we held a session on roles and responsibilities in the highways team, followed by a further session in August where we presented on DIY highways. So both these sessions, like the ones today, were recorded and are available on the DALC website. If you weren't able to attend these sessions or you're new to the role, I'd recommend spending the time in watching those recordings. So the main purpose of these events is to make sure you are getting good quality information and knowledge on how the highways teams operate, with an overarching aim of improving and continue to improve our relationship for the greater good of our residents. So myself and many senior highways colleagues attended the DALC conference at the beginning of this month, along with Donna Manson, our chief executive, and James McGuinness, the leader of the council. So this was a really good event for us to attend and to meet many of you in person. So one of the main takeaways, certainly for myself, Rob Richards, who's on the call today, along with Tom and John, who you've met previously, so the neighbourhood highway managers, who were key to the previous Connect events, was we recognised clerks. We had that we'd met at previous sessions, so this allowed us to engage in more meaningful conversations, and we felt we were beginning to build those long-term relationships, which we all aspire to achieve. We realise this is a journey, though, and we are at the start of that journey. So from previous engagements, one of the main asks from yourselves regarding communication was the foresight of proposed works happening on the network. So we recognise that we're not good at this. In the environment we work, there are lots of factors that affect when proposed works are due to take place. So these include, for example, weather, the changing priorities and funding that we have. So there's been a reluctance from ourselves to issue programs of work due to the fact that they may change, which then causes discontent within communities who are expecting works to happen at a certain time. However, it's recognised that little information is probably worse. So through discussions with Cara, we are working on a portal for towns and parish clerks, which will provide yourselves with many of our programs of works. So this is currently under development, and we've got an aim that we'll have this in place for the start of the next financial year. However, through the presentation today, we will highlight where the current information is available and where that sits. So as Cara said, today's session is how our roads are maintained. So this is called asset management. So to put this into context, it's making the best use of our resources to keep our asset in the best condition possible. So the session will focus on how this is achieved and the different techniques you may have seen out on the network. Cara referenced that this is a heavy subject and there is a lot of information that we'll present over the next hour and a half, but please do stick with us with that. One of the main things as well, we need to be conscious as part of this session that roads nationally have been underinvested in for several decades, and we're seeing the effect of this now more than ever. The road networks across the whole of England are in a very fragile state with huge backlogs of repair. Anybody who was at the conference, you heard Donna this month reference the backlog of road repairs in Devon is £200 million. So the roads in England, they're acutely susceptible to the elements that winter presents with snow, freezing temperatures and wet weather, some which we've discussed in previous sessions. So at this point, Cara, could I ask you to put the first slide up, please? Okay, so I'll ask colleagues to introduce themselves. So Rob Richards.
Yep, sorry, just find that mute button. Yeah, afternoon, everyone. Rob Richards, I'm Deputy Director, Highways and Infrastructure Development. So I pick up the Highways and Traffic Management Service. I also pick up our in-house design service that we have that delivers a lot of the capital projects that make the big changes around the county, and also Highways Development Management that are commenting on planning applications that have an impact on the highway.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Joe?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joe Deasy. I'm the Asset Management Group Manager and my group lead on highway policy, programme delivery during the year, and also the public rights of way and country parks.
Thanks, Joe. Rob T?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rob Turner, Asset Manager, Devon County Council. So I'm responsible for the data team, asset data team, materials, laboratory, and policy and programme team. You'll learn a bit more about these asset disciplines throughout the session.
Okay, thanks, Rob. So next slide, please, Cara. Okay, so agenda for today. So I'll pass over shortly to Rob, who'll give you a strategic update from Devon. And then over the next hour and a quarter or so, Joe and Rob will talk you through the legal frameworks and responsibilities, touching on the asset management and what that means, our carriageway strategy for preventative works, the challenges that the network we're facing at the moment. We'll then talk about the carriageway strategy, so the reactive side, our programs of work, where we fit in quality assurance, the innovations we're looking for, and then we'll go on to questions and feedback at the end. Okay, so
everyone knows I love an interactive element as part of these sessions, so I do have some polls where I just want to gauge where everybody's at before we begin. Our first poll is pretty much asking you sort of know the kind of topics we're going to be covering today, but I want to know how familiar you are with them already. So you should see a poll appear on your screen. I want to know if you're very familiar, somewhat familiar, or not familiar at all with maintenance, road maintenance. And as you can see, this is quite interesting. So we've got all across the spectrum, but some people are feeling somewhat familiar, which means you're probably familiar with some aspects of that agenda and maybe not so much on others. So that's really interesting. Thank you. And now I've got one more poll I'd like to share. This time, asking you what is of most significant concern to you in terms of highways maintenance. See that pop on your screen now. And we have one clear winner. on the results. So it's potholes and surface repairs that are of most significant, but also some concerns there around communication to the highways team, response times, and preventative strategies, but not so much concern with budget, resource and allocation. That's possibly because we've been telling you how much there isn't enough resource there. Maybe you wouldn't need to be told that more, I don't know. But I'll just stop that sharing now and we can get started with our presentation. So I'll hand over to Rob.
Okay, thanks, Cara. Do you want to share the first slide there? It should be legal framework, I believe. Yeah, there we are. Okay, so welcome everyone. I'm going to start with a very brief overview of the legal framework local authorities work within in terms of highway maintenance. So the main one there is the Highways Act 1980, which remains the key piece of legislation for highway authorities. The sections within that of note is section 41, which gives us a duty to maintain highways. So this section mandates that local authorities must ensure that highways are maintained to a standard that allows safe and convenient passage for all users. Against that is a section 58 though, which provides authorities a defence against claims. So for damages, if they can prove that they've taken all reasonable steps to ensure the highway was not dangerous. So we demonstrate this through having a robust safety inspection policy in place. And then finally, section 72, that gives authorities the power to alter and improve highways. It empowers authorities to make any improvements or alterations deemed necessary to maintain the highway effectively. The nature of these maintenance works we'll cover through the presentation. The bottom three there are, again, very important parts of legislation. So a bit of a segue here to a future event. So we've got these more managing the network, our network management duty, permitting of works, etc. But we've got about understanding roadworks, so that legislation will probably come more into that one, and that's on the 5th of December. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so let's bring us into responsibilities. So we've got a picture here. We quite like this picture, really. Of a road, and you'll note the highway features such as ditches, trees, verges. We call these assets. So these are assets, which we'll come into again in a minute. So you'll note that the responsibility for maintenance of certain assets lays with the landowners. We are in some instances the landowners. However, in other instances, landowners are private. For example, and that comes into play more with ditches and trees. So there are sort of mixed responsibilities there, just highlighting that point. Do you want the next slide there, please, guys? Okay, so just to get us into the room, into the right space, and thinking about maintenance, plus a bit more about what I was, how much you were listening when I talked about the previous slide, really. So how are we going to do this, Cara? I think we were just going to get people to put things in the message in the chat box, were we?
Yeah, we were. We wanted everyone to try and identify the different highways assets, wasn't it? And to put what you identify, type it in the chat so we can see what people are identifying.
Yeah. So how many highway features that need maintaining can you sort of pick out here, do you think?
So just an invitation here now, everyone, just to type in the chat what features you see.
So here we are. So that was basically to emphasize the vast number of highway assets that we need to maintain. Some of the ones you'll probably recognize, hopefully. Some of the ones you might not recognize. Some you'll be thinking, what does that mean? But yeah, just a way of emphasizing the vast number of assets which are competing for maintenance, basically, competing for budget, but all need maintaining. So do you want to go on to the next slide there? So again, we've talked about the number of assets. Now we're going to talk about scale, and I'm sure you know this, but I'm going to repeat it again. We've got Devon's got the largest road network in the country. I suppose another way of putting that, so just putting it into context. So if you join all of our carriageway together, and this is just carriageway, remember, just one of the assets we've got to maintain. So if you join it all together, then it will cover a third of the circumference of the Earth. I mean, it's pretty impressive, isn't it? It just puts it into context what we've got to maintain there. You'll also note on the right-hand side here, drainage is always always topical. But and some of the words in that word cloud, you're probably thinking, well, what on earth is an easement or a grip? Hopefully that picture will tell you what they are and you'll recognise those. But gullies, we've got over 200,000 of them. And grips, again, over 250,000, and easements 100, over 100,000. We're talking big numbers here, which we have to maintain. So next slide. So again, so how on earth do we go about that? So what we do here, but as well as a legislative framework, we have a code of practice. You can see the latest version there, well-maintained highway infrastructure code of practice. Although it's not a statutory requirement, DFT advises that local authorities follow the code to meet their legal duties to maintain the network. So the key takeaway from that code is it promotes the adoption of an integrated asset management approach, which we'll come on to. Authorities as well need to develop asset management policies, strategies, and plans. And these should be based on a local risk-based approach, resulting in a development of appropriate maintenance strategies. Okay. Just so I'm highlighting in there, the bottom thing is about the incentive fund. So in terms of asset management, and we'll explain what that is in a minute, but it's we were awarded funding, I think it was 2015, that they released the incentive fund, and authorities were rewarded. They were given extra money depending on what band you're in, about how you could demonstrate that you'd adopted asset management approaches. And Devon got into band 3 there, so we secured the highest available funding there. We'll go to the next slide, please. Okay, so what we've got here is a video. I keep on mentioning asset management, but it's probably difficult to understand what it is. So we've got this video, which is only a minute or so, but hopefully it will bring you into the room and tell you what we mean by asset management. So if you want to play the video, that'd be great.
Got no sound, Cara.
About its assets, based on a clear understanding of its long-term objectives and purpose. Asset management is the discipline that seeks to achieve this. Let's look at what it involves. Traditionally, asset decisions were bound to the life cycle of the asset in question, from its initial creation, through its working life, to its eventual disposal. These are not straightforward decisions. For example, how do you build cost-effective maintenance into the initial design? How do you measure the criticality of this asset to the rest of your portfolio? How can you be sure you even need the asset to begin with? Too often we see these kinds of decisions being made in isolation from the rest of the business. With asset management, the plans that are made for each asset are always part of a bigger system, which is aligned to the organizational strategy. This alignment must reach down to the people doing the day-to-day work on the assets themselves, including outsourced contractors. Asset management decisions are always part of a learning cycle that constantly monitors and reviews performance based on past decisions and stays abreast of the evolving landscape of risks and opportunities that inform future decisions. So what do these decisions actually look like? Although there's variation between businesses and industries, typically they'll involve balancing the costs, the risks, and the performance of an asset or assets over a particular timescale. The discipline has amassed a huge array of tools and techniques that allow each factor to be understood, measured, and traded with the other factors, giving senior management a menu of options to choose from that they know have taken all relevant information into account. Decisions are only as good as the information they're based on. So an asset managing organization needs to treat its data as a core asset in its own right. There needs to be a simple process for agreeing what information is needed, capturing it, and storing it in one place so that there's only one version of the truth. It's equally true that decisions are only as good as the people making them. This isn't just a matter of capability. At its heart, asset management is about collaborating across disciplines to make the best decisions using all the information and insights available. This is often as much a cultural challenge as a technical one. Organizations that have embraced this way of working have realized phenomenal benefits in terms of cost savings, risk reduction, improved performance, and so on. The IAM is at the forefront of helping organizations realize these benefits for themselves, giving investors and
Okay, does that work okay? I had a bit of issue at the beginning, but I think yeah, okay, good stuff. So the key takeaways that sort of, hopefully that gave you it was a good way of explaining it. We use that a couple of times, but it provides a framework and a system. It creates a good line of sight through the organization. It's part of a learning cycle as well. Asset data being at its core, and collaboration is really important. So next slide, please. Okay, so we talked as well about within the code of practice the need to develop a policy, strategy, and plan. So it says there what a policy is. So that's a concise document that says what the services approach and how it links to the objectives. The strategy there gives a bit more detail, and then the plan goes into more detail and depth, describing how we use the tools to develop, and manage our networks. Plan section is what we'll focus on more in this presentation. Okay, if you go to the next slide again, please. So really important documents, and they're on our website. So you've got a link at the top there. There's a QR code on the right there. So they're available for us on our website. So quite a lot of detail in there. If you want to go into the next one, please. So again, I said we're going to focus on the plan. So diving into the plan, here it is. So, and it also highlighted in the video that it needs to be aligned to our corporate priorities. And on the right hand side there, you'll see some of the ones which are priorities for Devon and for the service. So again, it's that line of sight, creating that line of sight through the documents. Next slide again, please. So diving into that, we've got a same structure for each one. So we've got a lead section. We talked about the number of assets we've got there, that word cloud. So we put them into key asset groups. So we split them up into these groups, and we've got 12 groups here. We used to combine some of these, but again, the more you break it down, the more you can develop effective plans for each one. So these are the key asset groups that we have an individual plan and strategy for. And if you move on to the next slide again, you'll see for each asset group, so for each of those 12, it's broken into the same structure. So it's about inventory, which where are all those assets within that group? What is their condition? How are they performing? What maintenance approach we're going to adapt to that asset group? What levels of service and investment do we want to do on that asset group? And then it comes into the development of the program of maintenance, and then how we balance the risks. And again, improvement actions. How are we going to improve that asset group and the gaps? Because on the right hand side here, you've got a little scale, and a part of that is to illustrate that different asset groups are in different maturity levels. So for example, some asset groups, the inventory is not as mature as other asset groups. And that's where that will be highlighted, and that will be an improvement action to make sure that all these asset groups have got the same amount of information and strategy involved within them. Okay, so if we go to the next slide. So another key takeaway from the video was asset data being at the heart of asset management and adopting a risk-based approach. Well, a maintenance hierarchy is key to this, enabling us to prioritize. This hopefully is not too blurry for you, but this illustrates our maintenance categories. So you'll see at the very top, the first couple are, maintained by National Highways. But if you get down to maintenance category 3, you're looking at sort of our A roads, the A361, for example, all the way down to the bottom there at 12, maintenance category 12, which are basically tracks. So not used for normal vehicular traffic. So you've got down to sort of 10s. So you'll see there that they're just serving one property. So again, there's a definition to each one of that massive amount of road network which I mentioned, which covers 1/3 of the circumference of the Earth. That is broken down into different categorizations, and you can prioritize therefore. So if you move to the next slide. So you can see what maintenance category the roads are. This is publicly available as well. So you can go on via that link or that QR code there, and you'll be able to see which maintenance category the various roads are. Okay, you'll see the little table on the left there will tell you what maintenance category, so you can zoom in and find out which roads are what maintenance category. Okay, next slide again. So what does that mean in practice? So this is from our carriageway annex. So we mentioned all those different asset groups. This is from our carriageway annex of our asset management plan. So you'll note here that there's different expectations. So again, it's that risk-based approach. We've got different expectations for different maintenance categories. So we call that levels of service. So we have different levels of service that we expect. So you'll see there on the top there, so it moves from provision of safety related issues only, all the way up to provision of safety, serviceability and sustainability. So we're looking at a carriageway, very localized repairs of defects of a non-safety nature. To the other end, we're looking at the uneven, rutted with multiple repairs and defects of a non-safety nature. So you'll see the picture on the left there. You see the extremes that we're managing. So on the right hand side there, that's the A361. Okay, North Devon Link Road. And on the left there, you've got a very typical rural minor road. Okay, in the middle there, you'll see how that works then. So again, pretty common sense. The higher maintenance categories, like the A361s and the A roads, etc., we're expecting, the level of service we're trying to get to is in that green category. And as you move down our maintenance categories, the expectation and the level of service that we are looking to achieve reduces. Okay. What is key to all of this, though, is the level of funding. We've mentioned that quite a lot, but that level, it depends on the level of funding we can have. Think of it as turning a dial. So the more money we get, the more we can move that level of service up. The less money we get, or the sustainable amount of money we get, that continues to move down. So that expectation and that level of service we can achieve moves down, and it moves to more of our network. Okay, so next slide. So we use a lot of data to help inform our maintenance decisions, such as collection of machine-led condition data, visual surveys, public reports. Unfortunately, we don't have time to that going today, but what I'm going to now is the maintenance strategies and the type of works that we typically employ. So these are the main headlines. We've got regulatory maintenance, and this involves the nature of inspecting and regulating the activities of others, such as highway safety inspections, network response teams. We've got resilience and emergencies. This involves managing disruption, implementing recovery measures for severe weather emergencies. And then we've got the winter service strategy, maintenance strategy, involves maintaining in adverse weather conditions, such as gritting, snow ploughing. Hopefully not there yet, but we will be getting there soon. It is getting a bit cold, isn't it, of a morning? And then we've got routine cyclical maintenance, and this involves activities like gully emptying, grass cutting, cleaning, those routine activities. And then that goes on to planned maintenance. So that involves planned schemes, primarily of reconditioning, structural renewal. And then we've got preventative maintenance, and that involves activities at preventing deterioration and extending the life of assets. And then we've got reactive maintenance, and that involves responding to safety related incidents and reports, defects, potholes, obstructions. We're going to quickly go through now. So we'll go through planned, preventative and reactive, and sort of give you an example of the kind of maintenance that involves. Okay, if you want to go on to the next one again. So the first one I mentioned was planned maintenance. So that involves the renewal of the surface course layer of the road, and where necessary, depending on the level of the damage, reconstruction of the deeper structural layers. So you see there on the left-hand side, the makeup of a road. So every time we have to redo that, so the deterioration is hits down into the surface layer, Normally, we just want to try and replace that, but sometimes the deterioration goes so far, it moves down into the lower structural layers. And what resurfacing does is it replaces that. Due to the funding constraints, we can't carry out extensive programs of this. You know, the cost and disruption is fairly high. However, the solution does last a long time. Okay, but next slide. We've got preventative. So as mentioned, resurfacing is not really financially sustainable, and ultimately it's a sign that we've got to that road too late. It's deteriorated too far. So ideally what we want to do is intervene earlier and stop it deteriorating to such that level in the first place. And that's where preventative maintenance comes in. So it's important that the road surfaces are sealed to prevent water ingress and prevent road deterioration. That's your main cause of road deterioration. So surface dressing is a process of sealing the surface, improving the surface texture, and prolonging the life of the road for many years. It's speedy, efficient, economic preventative maintenance. It's more rural based, so more based on the rural network. Doesn't alter the level of the carriageway. It doesn't last as long as resurfacing, however, it costs considerably less. If you go to the next slide, we'll just and we'll stop it off early. So it's quite a nice overall view, and see if I know where this one is actually, so we will see see what part of Devon this is. Makes me want to visit it, to be fair. So what we've got here then, so you'll see a calibrated tanker sprays a thin film of hot bitumen onto the road, and then a metered spreader puts on hard chippings onto the bitumen. These chippings are then rolled and pressed into the bitumen to form an interlocking surface. The road can then be driven on with care, with any loose chippings swept away as part of a sweeping regime, and then the road markings replaced. Okay, so you can see that process just happening there. So if people aren't aware, this is in Stowe, around there. Okay, so I think you should probably stop that video. It's probably enough to illustrate the kind of process we've got there. Okay. There we go. So we've got a more urban based of the same concept. So again, working on the principle of sealing the road, improving the surface texture. So this is microbes, more urban. This is a dual process application. So the first process regulates the existing surface. The second one provides the final surface. So the surface doesn't need to be rolled with traffic helping it to achieve the strength. So it needs traffic driving on it. As the surface is slightly raised, the ironwork is raised afterwards, and sweeping again is undertaken and lines go back. You'll see on the middle picture there, this is where we get a lot of communications. It does look pretty bad when you first put it down. It's a brown sludge, but it really beds down and beds in, and over time you would struggle to sort of pick it out outside of resurfacing. So it's that early life and where it settles down and compacts down and turns into the finished surface. So in the early life of these kind of processes, we get a lot of complaints, but they need time to settle down. If you go to the next one. So this graph has been put in to illustrate the long-term value for money that a preventative approach provides if we can intervene at the right time. So this is a really important concept, one that can be difficult for the public to understand, because through preventative maintenance strategy, we're treating roads that are visually in better condition than others. So that's one of the key things, is because it costs less, so we're spending less money on it, extending the life of it, instead of allowing them to deteriorate to the level where they'll require more costly and unsustainable reconstruction. You'll see that sort of graph there. You'll see the condition on the left there. You'll see the deterioration of the road there. If we intervene at the right time, we can make a really long-term, cost-effective maintenance solution, and we can extend the life of that road. As soon as we start getting past that intervention, you'll see where defects become visible, pothole patching on that graph there, and reconstruction. If it gets down to that level, the money will not be able to stretch as far to repair those, and we have to make choices on where we spend that money. So this illustrates that it's a key strategy to try and intervene and get in there. But the public will say, well, why are you doing this road? It looks a lot more, it looks fine. That road's fallen apart. We can't tackle all the ones that have fallen apart. We need to have a mixture of strategies, which I guess is the key concept of what we're putting across there from a preventative regime. Okay, the next one there, please. So again, a number of factors, though, unfortunately affect our ability to make and implement long-term maintenance plans, such as preventative ones. So that deterioration curve, let's be honest, though, is very idealized. So it doesn't. Lots of things affect that. So again, we've got climate change, inflation, the cost of our maintenance compared to 5 or 10 years ago is nearly doubled. We've got an evolved network as well. We've got some roads which are, you remember the slide on the resurfacing of that, the makeup of a road? Well, not all our roads are made up that way. In fact, not that many. We've got a lot of our roads, our rural network, our lower category roads have just evolved from dirt tracks. So they haven't the structure. So again, they are going to deteriorate. Though that curve on the preventative side is very idealized, and therefore it will deteriorate at different times. Traffic volumes have also increased, and we get very high traffic volumes at different times of the year as well, being a very rural county, and people coming holiday makers, etc. The nature of the traffic as well. The farming material, farming vehicles have got bigger. The vehicles have got bigger. They've got heavier through electric cars, etc. All these things are making those deterioration curves more challenging and difficult to interpret. So you go to the next one. So this one is illustrating as well, and it's been put in here as a segue to a future event again, which is about investment in highway maintenance. But another key challenge for us. This is it was an interesting slide. It's quite good when you see it. This is all the different funding pots that we get. So different types of funding, and at different times of the year. So to implement long-term strategies is really affected by not having the certainty about when our budget is coming and how much we're going to get. Some of these different different funds come in at different times of the year, and therefore it affects our ability to do long-term planning. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to quickly move on to reactive. We talked about the other strategy. We talked about planned. We've talked about preventative, reactive now. So Devon's reactive maintenance strategy is not just about potholes. We're due to the challenges mentioned earlier. We're having to expand our reactive strategy. So Dragon Patcher here is a technique that we have implemented and brought into Devon, and that's used to repair potholes and other resurfaced defects by layering hot emulsion and stone through the spray injection. We got the flame there, which is all good. But that dries. It does have a purpose. It's not just for show. It dries out the pothole to make sure that you get the best adhesion and longevity of the treatment. So it involves cleaning, drying the defect with compressed air and a flame, then building up layers of emulsion and stone, finally compacting it with the machine's weight and rollers. It's effective, requiring only 2 operators, and can be used as mobile works, making it less disruptive. It's effective for immediate repairs as a preventative measure as well against further deterioration, as a preparation sometimes for surface dressing. Used extensively during the summer months to make use of the longer daylight. During winter, they assist with traditional pothole repairs due to managing high demand. They're generally not a suitable method for addressing structural defects, however. So again, they won't last as long as the typical resurfacing, more holding the network together, but more than just potholes, extending that area that can be treated on a reactive basis. But this is still a reactive strategy. So not just filling those individual potholes, we're trying to make it go a little bit further. So again, next slide, please. So this is, again, another arm of our reactive strategy, which is serviceability patching. So that sees the provision of a dedicated hand patching gangs across the county. So these gangs are able to work on more of a reactive basis to address localized areas of carriageway deterioration using more traditional patching methods. So generally up to 50 meters squared in area. They're typically slower than drag and patcher, however, they may prove to be more effective when more robust repairs are required, for example, where more structurally sound one's needed. So it gives us more flexibility to the highway inspectors, allows for identification and capture of larger, more efficient interventions to pockets of deterioration. So again, it's not just those little tiny potholes. We're trying to expand these areas through different techniques, bringing in these different technologies. But again, they are not long-term solutions. They're holding the network together. If we're able to seal it, going back to the preventative one, the surface dressing, if we can follow them up with a sealing of it, these ones are still going to get water and they're still going to deteriorate. But it's holding that one in, just doing better than just the individual. Okay. So next slide, please. Yeah. So I think that's the end of my part of the discussion. Covering hopefully gives you a scope of what we have to maintain, how we go about it, how we make the decisions, how we prioritize things, and the different kind of techniques that we use. So bit of a judge here now to sort of see what we've learnt, see how this goes. So we've got 3 different types of strategies here. We've got the preventative strategy, we've got a planned strategy, and we've got our reactive strategy. Now, cost per square meter shows how much people were listening. So I sort of, through my presentation, was hopefully giving you the answers to this, but we'll see how it kind of bedded in. So they've got different costs per square meter, and all we're looking for is a high, medium, and low for cost per square meter. And we've got longevity. So some are going to last longer than others. So there's only one. You can only put a high into one box, a medium into another one, and a low into the other one. So on each of those ones. So hopefully that makes sense. How do we want to do this, Cara? Do we want to just say, give people time just to think about it, of where you would put it in, and then we'll bring up where we think it is?
Yeah, absolutely. If everyone just wants to take a minute and just have a go at the exercise and think if they can determine which ones are high, medium, or low, and then we'll come back together in a few seconds and we'll share the answers.
So again, it's coming across. We've got those balancing strategies, and cost does come into it, and the longevity comes into it. But having to balance those all the time comes back to that asset management video as well. We're balancing those key things, cost and risk. Okay, is that long enough time, do you reckon?
Yeah, there's no need for anyone to enter it into the chat this time. It's just having a go and having a thought. So yeah, do you want to share the results?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, there you go. So surface dressing, yeah, we said it was low cost, and it is. Resurfacing, medium, and serviceability patching, because of its reactive nature, and having to go out there and react, it's always going to be higher per square meter.
Could you remind us what the cost per square meter is? Do you have that data on the?
Well, we've got kind of ballparks. So I guess surface dressing would probably be around £5. Resurfacing, more about 40, 50, and serviceability patching at times up to about 100 potentially. So, and then we've got longevity of treatment. So again, surface dressing does last a number of years, but resurfacing is going to be the one that lasts for longest. Serviceability patching, as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't last as long. It's still a reactive strategy. But if you follow it up with a preventative one, we can extend that life. Again, highlighting that the need to put the importance of that preventative strategy and getting that across. Okay, I think that was me. I think we're going to pass over to Joe now. Is that right? Yep.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Afternoon, everyone. There's 3 topics I wanted to go through before we finish and open up for questions. They are the information that's currently provided, the way we're managing the quality of the works, and topics of innovation that we're working on as well. So kicking off with the information slide in front of you there, communication is a really important aspect of how our roads are maintained. As mentioned in the intro from Ian and Rob, this year, the Council has a corporate priority to improve community engagement, with particular emphasis on highways. We recognise that this is something that we could become much better at doing, and there are plans to produce a portal, as Ian mentioned. We'd be really interested to get some involvement from parish councils in developing that and checking that out with people. So perhaps that's something we can consider after the meeting. I just wanted to highlight that there's already quite a raft of information available, though, on our websites. So in this slide, you can see the landing page for highway maintenance, which is already available on the website. And this includes quite a lot of different pieces of information. Our strategy and plans are on there, our works programs, how to report items such as safety defects or flooding concerns, and how to undertake community self-help to address things that we're not able to achieve at present. You can get to the page on your mobile by downloading that QR code that's on the presentation there as well in the bottom left. So next slide, please, Cara. So here is what you get if you click into the works program element from that previous slide, and you get an opportunity to drill down further into our program in particular areas. So you could filter to, for instance, the northern area, as you can see we've done on this example, and then you can go even further. You can filter into a councillor area, for instance. So what we've got there in front of us is the Coombe Martin councillor area. And you'll see that there is a number of schemes in that programme for the year. You'll see what roads are affected, what type of treatment that we're actually doing there, what stage that work is at in the programme this year, the road class, which Rob mentioned in the presentation earlier, and also down to parish level, which parish it's actually in. So next slide, please, Cara. In addition, we also have a map-based version of that. So again, this example is following on from the previous slide, and we've zoomed into the Coombe Martin area, and you can see that there's dots that represent the different pieces of work that we're doing in that area. And on the left-hand side, the colour coding of what types of schemes they are. And by clicking on each of those dots, this is obviously just a screen grab, but if you did click on the dots in the web page, you get more information on the scheme that we're doing in that particular part. Next slide, please. So it's not just our work that people are interested in, and we understand that there's a lot of other people doing work on your roads. So we have web links in our web pages also to something that's called One Network, and I'm not really sure how far people have got into that in your communities. It's a really useful site. It's a national site, but it's particularly useful with all of Devon's work. You can see in this illustration that it's possible to add a location and a time frame. So here we put in Crediton. We put in the next 2 weeks, and it actually will bring up in map view any work that has been noticed or programmed to be undertaken in that Crediton area for the next couple of weeks. It's really helpful also that it's color coded. So the ones with red circles around them are ones that are likely to cause most disruption or have road closures involved with them, whereas green ones are letting people know there is work, but perhaps not too much impact on traffic flow. So when you actually click on any of these circles or works like that red roadwork sign on the near Moorlake Cross, it brings up further information which appears there on the left for that particular site, and that tells us that it's drainage works, that it's starting on the 28th of October, it's finishing on the 5th of November, and it tells us exactly where it is. And also if there's a temporary road closure attached to that, it'll tell us what the diversion is for that. Okay, next slide, please, Cara. Okay, just want to talk a little bit about quality assurance. So the materials laboratory play a really crucial role in the construction and maintenance of our highway assets. By conducting rigorous testing and site investigations, the lab ensures that materials used by us and by others working on the highway meet the stringent specifications required for highway construction. This not only guarantees the safety and durability of the highway, but also significantly reduces the potential for future maintenance. Such assessments are vital for the longevity of the highway assets and for the protection of the authority's investment in the highway asset. Okay, next slide, please. So concerning repair quality, we have implemented a thorough audit system where we examine a portion of all completed safety defect repairs each year. If any repairs do not meet the mutually agreed benchmarks and specifications, we issue remedial orders, requiring our contractor to return and correct these repairs at no cost to the council. These audits are randomized, but if we see any patterns, for example, in a specific area, we notify the contractor and work is done to actually improve the information or what we're recovering from those audits about what we might want to address or fix. Additionally, we've established performance improvement teams with our contractor, where we bring together DCC and contractor staff to regularly look at a platform of raising standards and escalating concerns. We investigate reports of substandard repairs from officers, councillors, and from members of the public. And these performance teams will look at how that's happened and what we might do to stop it happening in the future. We also collaborate closely with our materials laboratory and contractor to ensure that any materials are approved and tested for maximum durability. So next slide, please. Just some examples of innovation. You probably heard the phrase necessity is the mother of invention. So in times when funding is difficult and there are increasing environmental challenges that we've already mentioned, we're constantly looking at different ways of delivering the service or new ways of delivering the service. Each year, a small portion of the funding is set aside for considering ideas or projects that either have come to our attention from others or that our own teams, our own contractor has put forward as an idea to investigate. This illustration shows some of those innovations. On the left-hand side, you'll see a trial that's currently underway, which is with a company called Thermal Road Repairs. This offers a high output, low emission, zero waste solution for permanent asphalt and pothole repairs by heating up the road. And it heats up around the edges of a pothole and adds material to the middle of that pothole so that we get a seamless repair of the surface without having to dig it out any material or take away any waste. They say it's fast, efficient, cost-effective, and suitable for all asphalt types with minimal noise and no waste. So that's really what we're trying to check out with them. And we'll have some results on that, hopefully, in the coming weeks. On the top right, you'll see there's a unusually style of gully. It's got a much narrower free area at the surface so that vehicles such as heavy trucks and lorries don't actually whack into the gully grating as they travel down the road every time, because that part of the gully frame is buried beneath the tarmac. So again, we're going to try that out, and we're trying that on the A3124 up in North Taunton to see how that works between North Taunton and Winkley. Again, we'll have to test that out with our laboratory and see how well that's working for us. Finally, on the bottom right-hand side, there's some examples of a recent trial that we've done on asphalt preservation. So asphalt preservation is about spraying the road. It almost looks like we painted the road, but we're actually spraying the road with a bitumen compound. And the idea here is that that will fill up voids and actually rejuvenate the surface of that carriageway, which is a way of almost getting it back to its freshly laid standard. And that means that by doing that, we haven't had the need to add any aggregate to actually prolong the life of that road, but we should be able to get much more years of life from that by actually adding bitumen to that surface. Okay, thank you very much. One more slide thing, please, Cara. And finally, there's just this one on some in situ recycling that's currently going on in the county. So again, it's another innovation with a focus on decarbonisation. It uses existing road materials, and a machine comes in and rotates the existing surface, and we add both bitumen and cement band material to that, and then we relay or grade that surface back in place and then cover it over with the surface dressing. So again, it's a way of recycling the existing surface, reducing the amount of waste that needs to be taken away from site, and reusing existing material, which is very good for the environment in terms of carbon. So we're doing 6 sites of that around the county at the moment, and we'll monitor those over the next couple of years and see if this is something we want to add to the armoury for the future. That's me done, Cara. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our speakers. We're moving on now, I suppose, to give you an opportunity to ask questions and make comments about the information that you've heard.
Yeah. Plymouth was brought to a standstill some few weeks back when a variety of roadworks in a variety of places gridlocked it because nobody could move up off the side roads, and when they did, they all got wedged in up there. I totally get the idea that when you've got emergency roadworks, they have to be done, but when they conflict with existing projects that are going on and actually make traffic movement around the places, is there any solution that can be put in place? Because people were absolutely livid that they couldn't get in or out the town easily at all. I've no idea is the short answer to that, because I don't suppose there is. But
okay, hi Jane. I missed the first bit because it broke up. Did you say Timoth?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not aware of the problems there directly, but I can find out, see what happened for you there. We have got another event in December, which is to do with roadworks and how that's going to go on. So we'll discuss that a little bit more.
Cool. That's okay.
You know, particularly how that goes on. But generally, if we do have roadworks and there are emergencies, we only have they only have to tell us 2 hours afterwards. So a lot of work is actually put into that to try and prevent the issues that happen. And work may have gone on after that, but we will be focusing on that in our next session. I'm happy to take this offline with you because it's a separate issue.
Oh, let's wait till the next one. That's fine. It's just that that's the sort of thing that people query when you've been on a course like this. They want you to have all the answers, and I just thought I'd see, but I'm quite happy to wait till the next time.
Sure.
Thank you.
And we appreciate that. And that's why we've got one particularly to focus on that, because we know that is a real key issue.
Excellent.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jane.
We had a question from Gary Clifford. It might be that he's felt it's been answered through the presentation there, but it says, do you rely on public reporting?
So we don't rely on that. We have public reporting, but we have our own officers, neighbourhood highway officers, who will go out, which was part of the previous sessions, who will look for any kind of serviceability as well, but also anything which you feed into as towns and parishes or our members to build up, and also asset intelligence as to where we looked for repairs.
There's been questions around temporary patching. It was referenced that obviously they're not they don't have longevity. So how long do they last?
Okay, it very much depends, and I think Graham, the message you put in there is temporary, and that is the point, that they are temporary. What we're doing as part of our highway safety policy, and we'll put that in the chat, so everybody's got a link from that, is actually carrying out our statutory duty, some of what Rob talked about at the start, to make the roads safe for everybody. So they may very well be temporary patches, and we are aware that some don't last that long, but they're generally put in on the basis that we will come back to do something more permanent in the future. And that could be that it's part of a scheme as part of the LACP. It could be part of one of the interventions that Rob's just talked about, whether that's serviceability, whether that's dragon patching or Elastomac on there. There's lots of different factors affect as to whether that repair lasts, and we have to comply with our highway safety policy to make the carriageway safe. we don't know what conditions that we've gone out with. There may be water on the road, it may be freezing conditions or so, but we have to carry out that statutory duty first. What we'll then try and do is some kind of intervention in the background. So it could be that there's water on the network there, and we'll try and do something to try and remove that, a project which we're looking at the moment. But principally, it is a temporary repair to make it safe.
Thanks, Ian. Paul, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. I frequently use the pothole reporting service on the Devon County Council website, which is quite useful. But there's two aspects to it. First of all, there are a number of road defects that are shown in the appendix of the policy that you have on Devon's repairs. Are we able to use that portal as a way of reporting other defects, such as when there's big cracks in the road or whatever, but they don't fit the criteria for potholes? And the second question was, the criteria used for potholes sometimes it's not fit for purpose, because you could end up with, theoretically, a hole that's 8 foot deep, but because it hasn't got the sharp edges, it can't be reported, it seems to me. What do we do in those situations? Thank you.
Okay, so the ones where they don't fit the criteria for our highway safety policy, those are ones which we'd be looking to pick up as part of the serviceability side. So the kind of comment where it's not fit for purpose, what we actually do when we create the highway safety policy is that is also done very similar to all other authorities across the county, so we comply with our duty of care on there. But essentially they would be ones which would come up for serviceability, and any of the defects that you don't see in the appendices as well.
I think just to expand on that, if I may, I think the criteria that's laid out in the safety defect policy, particularly around potholes, comes historically from a National Audit Office and a piece of work they did. And if you look at other authorities, whilst it may not be identical, it's quite similar across every highway authority. So that's the kind of background to why we've got those criteria.
So could you ask the further question is, can we use that portal to report other defects that according to policy should be acted on, but there doesn't seem to be a mechanism to report those?
Yeah. Yes, Paul. Sorry, Paul. Yes, you can. In the reported function, you can report lots of other different things that are wrong, or even ask for a grid bin to be filled as well. So there's lots of other things to do in that reported section.
I think it's 16 different areas you can report on that reported page.
I would say, I suppose, if it really doesn't fit into any of the categories, you can always reach out to your neighbourhood highways officer as well.
That's right.
Okay, Kevin, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity. I've got a question about road signs for roadworks. Whenever I drive around the area, there are always road signs left over. We've got one on the 379 at Kitley at the moment that is sitting there referring to the road being closed and subject to 20-mile-an-hour speed limits from the June-July time. So does anybody actually drive back round and collect all the road signs after the roadworks have been completed?
It's a massive problem, Kevin, and partly because of these signs are really expensive, actually. But part of the problem is there's a huge amount of different contractors working for different organisations. So do you got any sense of what work that was associated with, whether it's from a statutory undertaker or maybe even a developer?
It was resurfacing of the 379 from Yampton to Brixton.
Okay.
There literally are signs still tied to lampposts along there, and there are a whole selection of 20-mile-an-hour, keep the speed down because of chipping signs.
I was just going to say, I suspect it's surface dressing on there, so we'll address that, Kevin.
Well, I can't find an easy place of reporting those.
That's one to go through the neighbourhood officer.
Yeah.
To report back into asset team.
Okay. All right.
But we do have it as a problem right across the county, and often it will be statutory undertakers, not in this case, but often it's statutory undertakers, and they subcontract the works, and then they subcontract the traffic management.
Yeah, we have a massive problem.
And their guys interested in having all the signs is a big problem.
Yeah, and really then it rolls on to those signs telling people the road's closed and it's not, etc. We've had that conversation before, that we had, Rob, the roadworks you and I are talking about at the moment, the sign company put up road close signs on a Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, and the road wasn't supposed to be closed until the until the Monday. So that shut the village off for 2 days when the road wasn't even supposed to be closed and nobody was working there. So I don't know what you can do about it, but those traffic management companies need to be held account for what they do.
Yeah. Okay.
Something to discuss further offline, I think, and see what we can do in terms of helping either report these kind of concerns and yeah, we'll follow this up, Kevin. I think. Thank you for flagging it with us.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to pop over to the chat quickly. There was a question from Melinda Osmond who asked, can a parish council have input on the prioritisation of road maintenance within their parish?
Can I have a go at answering that one?
Yeah, go on, Joe.
Yeah, so yes, they can, and we're very interested for parishes to actually work with the local neighbourhood highway teams on making it clear where they think the priorities for them are. We are in a situation where we can't do everything we want to do, but if it's a case of there are 5 or 6 roads we are thinking of doing in that particular parish, we're very much interested to understand which one the parish feels out of those would be the most important to do, because it probably will be one of them rather than all 6 of them. So yeah, they can influence that by having those discussions locally with their teams.
Thank you. Stephen, would you like to ask your question? Stephen Richards, are you still with us?
He's on mute. Stephen, you're on mute.
We'll assume maybe he's there now.
Yeah. Sorry, camera's not working either. My question is porous tarmac. You go along and you see quite a lot of a tarmac which is porous, rains on it, and then next thing you see mud coming up from the subsurfaces. And you see a lot of joints now which don't seem to have a tar poured along with things, and you get a lot of joints which don't seem to be sealed in. But if you see line marking on it, they seem to seal up quite well when you put road markings on it. And that's my question of porous tarmac soon leading to a lot bigger problems.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. Yeah, it's not porous asphalt, but it's probably SMA you're referring to, which is called a stone mastic asphalt, and it's become very popular in the last 15 years or so, and taken over from other materials that required much higher temperatures to produce, from depots and quarries. And one of the reasons we've moved across to it is it's a much quieter surface. So particularly for high-speed roads, we're trying to keep the noise levels down, and that's one of the reasons that the whole industry has moved towards it. It's more open textured. It's much more open textured than previous surfaces, but it's made in such a way that it's bound together that it doesn't matter so much that it has holes in the surface. We do understand where you're coming from about the joints, though, and it does unravel at the joints on many occasions if it hasn't been particularly laid exactly to standards. So that's something we've been trying to address with contractors for a number of years, and our lab are very much involved with that and ensuring that when work is done, that a lot of care is taken, making sure central joints or edge joint around patches are done properly so that we reduce that problem. But it's an industry thing now. I think we've moved across to that, and it's actually becoming more and more difficult to get some of those older materials.
What I see is I've seen it outside my house a few times, see it a lot of other places as well. You see it's like starting to open up on the top, and it's not long after that you start to see the dirt rising up through it. So it's definitely porous. It's not dirt going down, it's dirt coming up from underneath where water is ingressed down into the lower surfaces. And this is quite quickly after it's been done. you can see when the surface is quite rough on the top. I know what you talk about. You got where you got a very small surface with like the chiplings is pressed into the top on some of your smooth surfaces, but this is more of a rougher stuff. Seems a rougher finish, but you can actually see the dirt coming up from the subsurfaces, so it's got to be leaking water down into it.
Okay, well, we're happy to take away that to our laboratory and see if we can get some more information on that for parishes about what and why we're using the materials we are.
Because along with now, with this winter coming along, in the freezing coming along, it just does more and more damage underneath. You know, if you freeze water, what does it do? It blows everything apart.
Okay, perhaps I can connect Stephen and Joe together after this session to investigate that issue further.
Yeah, it'd be good to get the exact location of that. Yeah. So,
we will follow that up with you on offline, Stephen. Okay, Sheila, would you like to ask your question?
I think you're on mute as well, Sheila. You're on mute, Sheila. That's it.
I'm sorry, I'm on two screens and I lost my mouse. My question is about new roads. I'd like to know, do you adopt all new roads on new estates? And if so, what are the criteria you use?
Shall I pick that up? Yes, we do adopt new roads on new estates, but it's for the developer to put them up for adoption. So we are finding, I say more and more, it's still relatively low, but we're finding that some developers don't want to put their road up for adoption because they need to build it to a higher standard. So I think all the actual design standard and the specification is available on our website. I'm pretty confident that it is. So that lays out the specification, if you like, that we expect before we're going to adopt it.
And our materials, it's worth mentioning, our materials laboratory come into their own. They're really very, very engaged with development control who sort of manage that process. And again, there are, if it doesn't meet the criteria, they're not adopted. And there are ones which we haven't adopted or requested, but they get up to the standard before we adopt them. So there's a strong, a process in there to manage that.
We have an issue with new roads because we're having a huge development in our parish, and a lot of the roads are these really nice looking, like it's herringbone roads, and look really lovely, but we can't get the dustbin lorries down there because they're not strong enough, and I always thought that a new road, if it's going to go somewhere, if it's going to provide be a method of getting to your home, it has a certain level of durability, and to me there ought to be a standard that for all estate roads, that even when you're moving in with a lorry, you've got to be able to drive a lorry over that road regularly. And it seems to me that there's no standard. And it's worrying because we're going to have an awful lot of our new parishioners start to get really worried soon, because at least a third of the roads are these really pretty roads, but they are going to the dustbin lorries are stopping at the end of the road, and everyone's having to push their rubbish all to the end of the road.
Okay. Sheila, I think if you give us the exact locations of those, but if they should be constructed to the specification that Rob's talked about, they may not have been adopted at the moment, and if they're in that condition that they are, then we wouldn't stop them because they're inspected after a period of time and a year after being constructed as well. But if you give us the exact locations,
we're not a big fan of herringbone road, so
no.
I don't know whether we will have adopted those or not, but that's. It's difficult to say without knowing the exact location.
Yeah, pass the locations through to us and investigate.
Sorry to interrupt. I wonder if this is also perhaps a topic that might come under the highways and the planning system.
It will do. Yeah, you're right, Cara. Yeah.
So I'm just saying, not to want to put a pin in it, and we will follow it up with you, Sheila. But it's but this is a broader discussion that I think we can probably pick up at one of our later sessions.
Yeah, but just for clarity, we wouldn't adopt something which is going to cause us a maintenance problem if we know about it. Should be built to specification. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Jumping to the chat again quickly now, Riv Atkinson was asking a question about a particular road which is claptioned due to heavy vehicles. I was wanting to know if it had been noted. But I suppose how would a council go about knowing if an issue has been recorded or is noted by yourselves?
I think the key thing to just make everyone aware is, particularly on the A road network, we have driven machine surveys that look at the life expectancy of a road and help us in our asset management planning. So we'll have a good idea of how long the life is left in that road. The challenge then comes of whether we've got the budget to do anything about it. You know, we've got locations where we have programs of work planned, and if we can't get to them, there's not enough budget, they roll into future years. But we will know about it, particularly if it's the A388.
Again, it's worth noting again back to that safety inspection policy that on our A roads is inspected monthly. So with certain parts of the network, it's inspected because it's prioritizing, again back to the video. So again, the A roads will have a monthly safety inspection.
So it's quite likely it is in your system, the road that she's talking about. It's on a schedule somewhere based on the level of risk at the moment. Okay, then, Brian, would you like to ask your question?
Good afternoon, everybody. After you've completed your surface dressing of a road, you then send a machine along to collect all the chippings that are loose. It's the disposal of those that I'm interested in, because you usually find that most of these end up with various farmers in the area. Whereas parish councils would dearly love to have this material to use on a variety of their sites throughout the parish, where they can't sort of afford to buy such materials. Isn't it possible that when you do a surface dressing road in an area, the local parish council might have the first opportunity of using some of these goodies that are collected?
Rob, do you want to answer that one? Rob T?
Yeah, so yeah, in terms of the chippings, they do, the contractor, so the back sweepings, they put the sweeper in, they pull these back and they recycle them. So as part of their process, they do a lot of recycling, which is encouraged obviously because of the carbon footprint, etc. So they wash them again and recycle them and use them as part of future programs. As for it being applicable for use for yourselves, this is a separate contract, so it would have to be a discussion with the contractor direct. It's not something we can advise. It's their material. One thing which we do use as well, though, is planings from resurfacing on public rights of way network and stuff like that. So we do use a provision of those planes to strengthen up and use on our public rights of way network. So that does get use. Again, I think if you've got certain areas, I would reach out to your neighbourhood officer and see what could be done there.
Good to hear that recycling's happening, and I suppose there's nothing stopping you, I suppose, walking up to the contractor and seeing if they want to leave any of their leftovers behind. But yeah, thanks for that. I know there's a couple more questions.
I did speak to our local highways officer about this matter. He referred me to a contractor, and after a fruitless day of trying phone calls, emails, and all that, I just gave up.
Yeah. Let's say it would be a long shot, I think, but yeah, it's worth asking the question.
And plus, it's the footpaths network that I'm thinking about. We've got 76 footpaths in our parish, and this would really be most useful.
Well, thanks for your feedback, Brian. We'll see if there's anything we can do. That we'll take that away. I know there's a couple more questions, but we are getting very close to the end of the session. So I'm going to say any remaining questions, if you type them in the chat, then we can make sure we get a response to you, and we'll get a written response to you as soon as practically possible. But I just wanted to do a couple of polls, if I may. Again, another interactive element, but I just want to know how well this session has gone. So I've got a couple of polls for those who are still with us. The first one is going to be about just how confident you've heard a lot of information today. So I just want to get a feel for how confident would you feel sort of communicating sort of road maintenance strategies and trying to manage expectations in your community after today's session. So again, just so you can see, yes, everyone's mostly somewhat confident, but I can understand why there's not more that are very confident. It's a really complex area, but I'm glad to see that you're feeling that you have got some information from today. So thank you for that. And then finally, my next poll is, I just wanted to get a feel for how useful this session has been in helping you to understand the complexities of highways maintenance. And really, really encouraging. Everyone has found this really useful, and some of you even extremely useful. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. It's really helpful in helps us to understand the impact these sessions are having. So thank you very much. I'm now going to hand back over to Ian for some closing remarks and next steps.
Okay, all right. Just a big thank you again, Cara, for organised session, for everybody for giving up their time in the event. It is really useful for all of us in making sure we get that information across. Like I said, the previous sessions have been recorded, and there's some questions which have come up which were possibly answered in those sessions. So it may be good if you haven't seen those to rewatch those. So plug for future events. We've got 4 which are scheduled in at the moment. So there's understanding roadworks, which question we had earlier on about how those are put in and the different aspects we have of who wants to occupy the highway. That's on the 5th of December. We have investment in highway infrastructure. So looking at the funding we've got as we move into the new year in the 6th of February. Highways in the planning system. So some of the questions we come up today again about development and how the roads are altered. And then a new one, all things traffic, which is on the 18th of June next year. These sessions are driven by yourself. So if there's some topic which you want to have discussed or some topic which you want some more information on, then please communicate that with Cara, and we're looking for future events. Okay, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Ian. And so just as we conclude, thanks once again to all of our speakers from Devon Kent Council. Really appreciate you giving up your time to help us better understand the complexities involved with our highways work. I have put in the chat a quick link to our feedback form. So for everyone here today, and thanks for giving your time, but please can you share your feedback before you go? Because we'd really love to hear more about how the session has worked for you, how we can improve future sessions and the topics that you might want to see coming forward. But other than that, thank you so much for your time, and hopefully see you again at another event soon. Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.